We are live. I'm going to kick this off while people are hopefully dropping in. Or maybe we can give everyone maybe another minute or so because no one's really on time. Okay. Cool. I'm so excited about this webinar. I feel like I've been going on several podcasts and kind of presenting this, and it's finally happening that I actually do a live kind of broadcast to multiple people, which is super cool because I feel this is an extremely important topic for everyone to know about. So I'm gonna kick this off because I feel like everyone is going to be dropping in anytime soon. So welcome everyone to the Gut Menstrual Cycle Access webinar. Today we're going to talk about the impact on cycle regularity and period pain, and of course other kind of symptoms that you get with your cycle. I would like to invite everyone to have a think about whether their cycle is regular, whether they struggle with PMS or PMDD or any kind of condition, or maybe it's a bit more isolated than that and you're struggling with period pain. Regardless of what you're struggling with, this webinar is going to be extremely helpful in helping you understand how you can support your gut health to better your menstrual cycle. So without further ado, over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to dive into several aspects of how your gut health and the menstrual cycle are connected, and you will learn how deeply one impacts the other, especially when it comes to regularity and period pain. We're going to start with the most underrated axis, and you might have not heard about it. It's called the gut-gyne axis or gut reproductive axis. I'm just checking my screen is all good. Yeah. Then we're going to dive into the 3 monthly cycles. So this might come as a surprise for some of you, but we don't just have one cycle, we actually have 3. And I'm really curious when we get to that to hear how many people actually know that we have 3 monthly cycles. Then we're going to do a health check-in, which I'm really excited about because after we learn how your gut and period connect, we're going to see where you are in your gut health journey, and we're going to do a check-in through a quiz. So we're just going to do a small quiz online. This is going to be a live stream, so it will stay forever on YouTube. And based on your answers and numbers of symptoms, you will know how much fiber and what kind of foods roughly to add in your diet to start making strides in your regularity, pain levels, and other symptoms. Next, we're going to talk about 3 foods that everyone should have in their diet. And then we're going to dive into a Q&A if there's any questions. And then I'm going to end this stream with leaving you with A Taste for a Better Period, which is a book of recipes that are created and targeted for everyone that's starting on their gut healing journey and wants to support their menstrual cycle. And they're very simple to make, they're meal preppable, and anyone can start doing them, and anyone can start taking care of their gut for a better menstrual cycle. So let's have a look at, before we dive into all of that, I kind of just wanted to share a little bit about me. So the reason why I'm in this space is because I've had my own health struggles for about 15 years, where I had extremely painful periods for the longest time. And I had a lot of small issues that just weren't connected by any other practitioner that I've seen. So, for example, I started having extremely painful periods, and with that, I was diagnosed with a thyroid autoimmune condition, which is linked to the gut. Your thyroid is linked to the gut, and we're going to see in a second how that is. I was also having to do a C-section like surgery where I took out a 16 centimeter ovarian cyst. That was a result of the thyroid autoimmune condition because I wasn't ovulating. And the thyroid autoimmune condition came about from a very unhealthy gut, which is something that it took me very long to learn, but I'm going to be teaching you in the next half an hour, 40 minutes. And it took me very many years to figure out that the gut was actually what was keeping me behind in making strides in my health journey. And that's what led me to become a nutritionist and then later on specialize in the menstrual cycle. So I became a menstrual cycle nutritionist. And I've helped over 250 women to date to support their menstrual cycle by supporting their gut. And with a focus on irregular periods and painful periods. I am also the founder of Her Aligned Hub, which is a coaching business for women struggling with gut and menstrual problems. And I also use this platform as a platform to advocate for women's health. So we know these days that there's so many quick fixes and trends, and everyone thinks that they've found the next best thing and that's going to heal you in like 1 week or 2 days, but then it's just not sustainable. So I kind of use my platform to advocate for women, for women's health, but also kind of debunk myths, because I see a lot of myths and things that are happening on a day-to-day that actually harm women as opposed to making them feel better with their menstrual cycle. So I use my platform for that as well. And finally, I am a speaker too. I spoke on a TEDx stage. I'm a salon speaker, and I spoke on the gut menstrual cycle connection within the context of a TED talk. And I'm also a femhealth/femtech advisor for health companies, kind of drawing from my experience of working with clients one-to-one and kind of trying to input that information into the direction of where the company is going and what is needed from women these days. So this is a little bit about me, and I wanted to kind of share that before I tell you how your gut health and the cycle connect. Next, I want to talk to you about this axis called the gut-gynec axis or gut reproductive axis. Basically, what this means is a bidirectional communication between the gut and the female reproductive system. It does a few things. It does quite a few things, but I will kind of zone into the 3 most important ones that I feel are elemental for everyone that is trying to learn how to take better care of their menstrual cycle, to know about their gut, and it might even be like the thing that is keeping you from getting a better period. So let's have a look at what the gut does for you in relation to your menstrual cycle. To begin with, and I think this is the most important one, especially for painful periods, it helps eliminate excess hormones through something called the estrobolome. The estrobolome is a dedicated portion of your gut microbiome, and it's rich in bacteria, microbes, and genes that are in charge of eliminating excess estrogen from the body. It's actually working with the liver in order to get rid of excess estrogen. So the liver filters and uses spent estrogen from the blood and packages it so it can be excreted. This processed estrogen essentially is sent to the intestines, to your gut. The microbes of the estrobolome, this part of the gut that we're talking about, and I'm going to backtrack in a second to tell you what the gut actually is because I realized I haven't, is basically this part of the gut is in charge of the fate of estrogen, so to put it. The gut produces this particular enzyme that helps unpack estrogen, either making it active again or leaving it as inactive and it gets reabsorbed into circulation. We want a balance here. So we want a healthy gut that helps us achieve this balance. We don't want too much estrogen, but we also don't want too little, because a few things happen when we have too little estrogen or too much estrogen. The key point here is that this estrobolome, which is part of the gut, helps us achieve this balance. And to backtrack, as I said a little bit, and explain what the gut is basically it starts in your mouth. It's short for gastrointestinal tract. It starts in your mouth and it ends at your anus. And this whole passage, this whole journey is your gastrointestinal tract. Today, we're going to focus on what is known as the gut, but your intestines basically, which is the small intestine and the large intestine, which is home to trillions of bacteria. These bacteria are either good or bad, and they mostly live in your colon and your small intestine. And they do a lot of incredible things. For example, they help you eliminate excess estrogen. They help regulate your immune system and make you stronger. They help you absorb vitamins and minerals from foods that you're eating. They help keep you strong and transport nutrients to cells so they can be used. They help convert inactive thyroid hormone to active thyroid hormone, and a bunch of many other things. And this is going to be the focus of today. This part of the gut called the gut microbiome. So back to what I was talking about and telling you about the liver and the gut microbiome. So when the gut is healthy, we have a healthy estrobolome, which is this part that helps you eliminate estrogen. And thus we have levels of healthy estrogen. When our gut is unhealthy, and I put here dysbiosis. So dysbiosis is one of the reasons why your gut could potentially be unhealthy, but there's also other reasons for your gut to not function optimally. These are IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, IBD, SIBO, leaky gut, celiac disease, and many other ways in which your gut can be unhealthy. But what happens when your gut is unhealthy is we get something called estrogen dominance. When we have estrogen dominance, we have more PMS, more clots, higher pain, worse endo flare-ups, and many other symptoms. So a period clot is essentially something normal up until it gets too big. So if it's bigger than kind of like a quarter, then it's too big, and it's a sign of. It can be also a sign of adenomyosis, endometriosis, uterine fibroids, but it can also be a sign of excess estrogen. So check that if that's the case, and you also have very heavy painful periods. Or we can go the other way and we eliminate too much estrogen, and then we get into an estrogen deficiency, which is preventing the healthy thickening of the uterine lining, and it's delaying ovulation, giving us irregular cycles, spotting, or sometimes even a complete absence of a period. Another thing, second most important thing that your gut does for your menstrual cycle is supporting systemic inflammation and immunity. 70% of your immune system resides in the gut, meaning issues here impact inflammation levels. I do want to preface this by saying inflammation is not always bad, and it's not always what's painted online to be. For example, you always hear people saying, "Oh, I have so much inflammation." Okay, it's not a bad thing always. It's bad when it becomes systemic and chronic, like in the case of endo and PCOS. But for example, when you cut yourself or when you scrape your elbows or knees or whatever, and you feel like that warm around, I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of stop the fear-mongering process that was vested in you when you go online and see everyone. Inflammation is bad. So let's say you have a wound here and you feel like that warm sensation, that is literally your body sending stuff to heal. So inflammation is actually healing. Where it gets bad, and don't get me wrong, it can get bad, is when it's a continuous stress on the body that keeps these inflammatory markers high. What happens in this instance is when it comes to your period, I'm not going to get into everything else, but when it comes to your period, what happens to inflammation is when you shed your uterine lining on the first day of your new menstrual cycle, so day 1, your body produces something called prostaglandins. So prostaglandins are hormone-like chemicals that are making your uterine line shed. It kind of like, it shakes it, so like the blood kind of starts dripping away into the event that we know as the menstrual cycle. The problem is, if you have too much, your inflammation is raised continuously and constantly, and that affects the amount of prostaglandins that your body releases. So your body will release extra. They're good ones and they're pro-inflammatory ones, and they're the ones that do the job and actually shape the uterine lining to liberate the flow. The bad ones come as a result of too much inflammation in the body. Now, where that links to the gut is with 70% of your immune system being in the gut. If you're constantly having bloating, pain after eating, what else? Belching, always like feeling heartburn and just feeling like you're not digesting food or not going to the toilet. All of these things are signs that your gut is not well. So with the immune system being so ever present in your gut environment, and you not having a healthy gut, that's going to trigger the immune system to kind of raise these inflammatory markers, and that can impact your menstrual cycle with much more pain levels. As I said, endo and PCOS, for example, are characterized by chronic pelvic inflammation, where a poor gut elevates inflammatory markers, triggering flare-ups and symptoms and more pain. There is a growing body of research that is telling us that endometriosis flare-ups are much worse in women with poorer gut health rather than in women who have a great state of their gut health. And in PCOS, we go as far as to say that you can raise your chances of developing PCOS if your gut is not in a healthy place. And if you already have PCOS, then your symptoms are much worse and much more prominent throughout the month. So that's another thing that the gut does for your period regularity, pain levels, and just symptoms, and even other conditions. And the final thing that I want to tell you about is, because this has been super annoying, if you're a woman and have a period, you will have had infections and yeast or bacterial vaginosis and other infections. So the way that this flares up in women who have a poor state of their gut health is pain, inflammation, regularity, flare-ups, and more are modulated by how healthy your gut is. So the gut microbiome produces something called short-chain fatty acids that regulate inflammation throughout the body. A healthy gut keeps systemic inflammation low, which protects the pelvic region against issues like bacterial vaginosis and yeast infections. If you have a healthier gut, you won't get the monthly yeast infection once you pass from ovulation into luteal. So if you have a period and every month you have a yeast infection, just know your gut could be the reason why that happens. I know. It was mind-blowing for me, and it's been mind-blowing for the other 250 plus women that I worked with. And now that you understand this connection better, I kind of wanted to go a layer deeper and see at the nutrient level how our cycle is impacted. And I want to preface that by saying that nutrient absorption happens in the gut, and your trillions of microbes are in charge with helping you absorb these nutrients from the foods you eat. And this could just as well be the explanation why, have you ever caught yourself saying things like, I'm doing everything that I can, I eat so healthy? Well, this is why sometimes we eat so well, but still have a painful period and bloating and low energy and other symptoms. Because our gut is not equipped with the right tools, aka these tools being the bugs, that are helping you to absorb the nutrients. And I want to say, this is, if I were to summarize it, it would be this: nutrition feeds each of the 3 monthly cycles, inputting the right nutrients for your cycle to function properly. And this is not cycle syncing. And since I opened that can of worms, I'm just going to say it. Cycle syncing practices tell you to change your nutrients pretty much every week of the cycle. Now, your body is amazing, but it can't constantly switch between the nutrients that you're giving it and still create the maximum benefits for you to have a healthy cycle. So what happens is you don't really get all the nutrients you need if you switch your nutrition every week. They've done a study on this with zinc. So cycle syncing tells you to have zinc 1 week of the cycle, roughly, right? Now, when we looked at this study, and I think they followed the participants over 3 months, they saw that the women who took zinc every day of the cycle had much less PMS than women who took zinc 1 week out of the cycle. And this goes for all the nutrients that we're going to get to in a second. But first, I want to explain to you the 3 monthly cycles. And I just want to check in that I got everyone in here and my screen is still showing the right slide. Yes, it is. Okay, so the first monthly cycle that you should know about is the hormonal cycle. This is essentially how your hormones go up and down throughout the cycle. In menstruation, we see the hormones a bit more flatlined. So we see estrogen and progesterone and LH and FSH, which are the main cycle hormones, all flat. Then we go into the follicular phase and we see a rise in estrogen, and then also towards ovulation, a peak in luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. And then towards the luteal phase, we see estrogen going a bit lower, and also we see a peak of testosterone at ovulation, which is not represented there, but it's good to know. And then at the luteal phase, we see progesterone rising as a result of ovulation, and we see estrogen going lower. And as we approach a new cycle and menstruation, all of these hormones are going to flatline again into a new cycle. So that's your hormonal cycle. Now, going by that's heavily influenced, and the other way around, by the ovarian cycle. The ovarian cycle is basically the body has a few follicles that it chooses from every month that have been developing for a while, and it chooses a primary follicle. This primary follicle goes on to develop into a secondary follicle already at menstruation. So your body's not finishing a cycle that it starts another one. That's how it goes, because it takes a while. And then in the follicular phase, this develops into a mature follicle, and at ovulation, it ruptures into the event that we know as ovulation. This is the main event of the cycle. It's not your period, it's ovulation. When you ovulate, it dictates pretty much how healthy your period and your luteal phase is going to be. So everyone's feeling amazing in their follicular, right? Estrogen is queen. But then if we don't ovulate, we could be spotting. If we ovulate late, we have a long follicular phase and a long period. We don't know when our next bleed is going to be. We're confused. We're moody. We are full of PMS. We're struggling. The luteal phase becomes a struggle. But if we do go through this event, this ovulatory event, and release the egg, we are developing something called the corpus luteum, which is what raises progesterone levels in the luteal phase. So with that in mind, that helps us be a bit more calm. It helps us feel more supported in the luteal phase. And if the temperature stays up for 10 to 14, 16 days, we know we had a healtty luteal phase and a healthy level of progesterone. And this is the ovarian cycle. Now the endometrium follows the other two cycles. The endometrium sheds at menstruation, and then it builds gradually throughout the cycle until it sheds again at menstruation. All of these three cycles are fed by different nutrients. So we have ferritin, we have zinc, we have calcium, we have magnesium, we have selenium, we have iron. All of these minerals are a type of nutrient, are feeding our monthly cycles. Now, that only happens if we're able to extract those nutrients from the foods that we're eating. And we can only do that if we have a healthy gut. So with that in mind, let's do a quick gut health check-in, because I would like to see and kind of be able to explain to you where is the best place to start fiber-wise to make sure you don't bloat, you don't have a reaction, you are feeling all right, and the foods that you're eating don't make you feel worse than if you're not eating them. Because as we've seen, and you learned so much already, the gut is central to a healthy menstrual cycle. So I'd like to see, this is the first time that I'm doing it with this, so I'm not sure, can anyone put like an emoji in the chat just to check that we have people here, and like I just did now, and you can actually use the chat to talk to me and tell me that you can tell me how many symptoms you're having from the gut quiz that we're doing. Okay, I really hope that you guys can see this and you're able to comment in the chat. So just give me a thumbs up or something if you can. But essentially, what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a minute and give you a chance to look through this gut health quiz and see how many symptoms you have. And then once you do that, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Once you do that, while I explain to you what this is and this isn't, then you can either just keep it to yourself or tell me, communicate with me in the chat how many symptoms you've had, and then I can tell you exactly. We have comment, hi. Then I can tell you exactly what kind of foods are the best to start having and where to start with. So I'm going to leave this here for 1 second. There's about 10 to 14 questions, super easy, just count them out. But by the way, this is not medical advice. It's basically symptoms I pulled out of working with over 200 women that were most common. 250. I keep forgetting that I surpassed 200. I'm still stuck on that. That were most common and indicative of issues with their gut. So there's far more than this for sure. So take this with a pinch of salt, but this is not a diagnosis. It's kind of like a way to steer you in the right direction, especially if you have more than 5 to 7 symptoms from this list in conjunction with an irregular painful or heavily symptomatic cycle. This will be able to kind of really help you understand, okay, maybe I'm doing everything else, but I'm still having this issue. So now I know kind of where to look. Okay, I'll give you like 30 more seconds. Okay, I hope everyone had a chance. Do you need like 30 more seconds? Let me know. You can just tell me if you need a little bit more time, and I'll make sure to give you like 30 more seconds. Okay, since no one's saying anything, I'm just gonna move on and kind of tell you what kind of way is the best to eat depending on your symptoms. Before I say that, answering these questions honestly can tell you where you are in your gut health journey and can really, really help you with your fiber intake, because as you'll see, having too much fiber for where you are with your gut in your gut health journey can really mess things up for how you feel and make you more bloated and kind of slow things down as opposed to kind of push you forward. So if you've had about 0 to 5 symptoms, you are easily safe to eat 15 to 23 grams of fiber in a day. You also should be safe to eat raw vegetables, some pulses, legumes, and can generally have fiber at every meal. Only 2, nice. That's really good. 2, then you can definitely have all these vegetables and pulses and can generally have more fiber at every meal. In terms of if you've had like 5 to 8 symptoms, we're looking more at 12 to 15 grams of fiber a day. Actually, before I move on to 5 to 8 symptoms, if you are having just a couple of symptoms and you're still having bloating when you eat fiber, then it might be that some of the symptoms that you're experiencing have not been added to the list that I shared earlier. And you can tell me more about it in the Q&A section. You can just write your question and I'll answer it. When it comes to the second bracket, which is 5 to 8 symptoms, we have about 12 to 15 grams of fiber a day. Here, it's safe to eat boiled or cooked vegetables, and typically it's good to stay within this range for like 1 or 2 weeks, even up to 4, before you increase the fiber intake, just to make sure that your body and your gut gets used to it. And I'll tell you what you should do in conjunction with increasing your fiber to make sure that you can progress without the fear of bloating. And finally, if you had more than 10 symptoms, you can still eat fiber in a day, and it's highly recommended to, but we're going to look more into a safer type of fiber, which is fruit, as that's the easiest, softest, and most tolerated type of fiber for heavy symptoms. If you can tolerate oats, if you boil them properly, can be a good start. If not, stewed pears, stewed apples are amazing, papaya, any kinds of berries. This is a great basics to start with, and kiwis. That's like really a great thing that you can do if you're really struggling with fiber and get bloated and in pain after you eat. This is what I typically see works well for my clients. Again, this is not generic and personalized to you. So test this with this idea in mind that this is not particularly to you, and check what your tolerance is, because it's a great place to start if you're having gut symptoms. I kind of want to get now into the part, because we're already on the call for more than 35 minutes. I wanted to kind of start by telling you about a list of foods that I feel everyone should have in their diet for better gut and menstrual cycle. And I'll tell you about these foods, but I also have more recipes to share with you in the next part. And you can kind of scan the QR code in a second that I'll share with you and get your little cookbook for a better gut and menstrual cycle. The first category of foods that I would advise anyone to start with is, and I divide them in 3, is the food category that creates hormones. Especially if you have pain and cycle irregularity, oily fish, and this is the acronym for the fish, SMASH, which stands for sardine, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring. These are the best oily fish to have to reduce inflammation and support your gut health and support hormone creation. Next best thing is eggs, because eggs contain the good cholesterol, which is called the HDL cholesterol. And this cholesterol does something incredible for your body. it helps to create something called pregnenolone, which is also known as the mother hormone. And it's precursor to cycle hormones. So this is what creates your cycle hormones and many others. But if you're struggling with ovulating, cycle irregularity, this is incredible to add in your diet. Next category is supporting thyroid hormone category, because because your thyroid hormone gets, to put it simply, you have a higher chance of skipping ovulation. And where it links to the gut on a gut thyroid axis is thyroid produces about, the thyroid is this gland in your neck, by the way, produces about 80% of its hormone as inactive. So it cannot be used by the body. What happens is that hormone gets converted in the gut. If you don't have a healthy gut, that conversion doesn't happen. Your body cannot use thyroid hormone and give the precursors that it needs for ovulation to happen. You have more delayed and skipped periods, and perhaps even more spotting, and perhaps even problems, for sure, even some problems with your thyroid if you're not producing enough thyroid hormone. So Brazil nuts, like one is enough in a day. It has selenium, which helps the thyroid create thyroid hormone and activate this thyroid hormone, which, as we said, is essential for healthy ovulation and regular cycles. And the final category that I would say it's extremely important for anyone to have is the kind of foods that eliminate hormones. Now, these are your cruciferous vegetables, all the things that we love, like the broccoli, the cabbage, the kale, the Brussels sprouts, etc. These are cruciferous vegetables, and they support the liver in breaking down that used estrogen, while their fibers help remove it through the gut. If you're not pooping once or twice a day and you have heavy periods, this might be the reason why. You have to look into how many times a day do you go to the toilet, and making sure it's at least once or twice. Even if the advice out there is it's normal for you to go to the bathroom every one a day to every 3 days, I would say for a healthy menstrual cycle, eliminating estrogen and just not having a super heavy flow, the best thing to aim for is once a day at least. And then I wanted to share some further evidence-based steps to support your cycle by supporting your gut before we get into the Q&A part. So as I said earlier, we talked about fiber, but there is something that comes before that, or at least together with that, which is fermented foods. Fermented foods are the actual bugs, aka the probiotics, that put those bugs in your gut. And fiber is what keeps those bugs alive and well. So if you're having fiber but there's no bugs there, you'll get very bloated. If you're having the bugs there but you're not giving them the fiber, then those bugs will die. That's why it's also important to be consistent with your food and not switch it every week, because your bugs love consistency. And that brings me to another point, which is having 30 plants a week is an essential step in having a healthy gut microbiome environment and a healthy menstrual cycle. I consider plants, and not just me, the medical community considers plants anything from vegetables, fruit, nuts, nut butters, spices, ferments, beans and pulses, and so on. All of these are plants, and your gut loves a variety of plants. For example, 30 plants a week is a good number to aim for, because that gives you enough nutrients, prebiotics and probiotics for a healthy gut. Learning how to count those plants is tricky, and we tend to say that we get more than we actually do. I actually created something called a plant tracker, which is based on an algorithm that helps you calculate your plants. And I'm more than happy to talk about sharing that with you if you want to send me a message on Instagram after. In the next slide that I'll share, I'll put a QR code to my Instagram as well. We can talk about how can I help you count those plants so you make sure you have 30 in a week. The third thing that I think it's a bit controversial, but I think it's one of the things that changed my gut health and many of my clients' gut health was a 10 to 14 hours overnight fast. This is the moment where a cleanup crew comes out, which is a particular type of gut bugs that doesn't come out at another time but this. What that does is it cleans debris and kind of gunk and everything else that stays in your gut and doesn't get eliminated, and that is extremely important for a healthy gut. But these guys only come out at night and only if you cross a certain window without food. Some people say 8 hours, some people say 16 hours. I would say if you do the 10 to 14 hours, so let's say you have dinner at 7 p.m. and then you have food the next morning at 6 a.m. or you have dinner at 8 and you have food at 6 a.m. That's like should be plenty enough time to support your gut. Which brings me to a point that I haven't shared here, which is make sure you don't skip breakfast. That inflammation in the gut that we spoke about, that not having breakfast can make, for women especially, cortisol, which spikes in the morning anyway to wake you up and keep you alive and well, stay high for longer, and too much of that during the day can cause the gut to, that can impact the gut and cause a bit of inflammation, which we don't want because of all the reasons that we've seen. And finally, I would say one important thing to do is cycle tracking, because the best way to check how your next period will be, if you have delayed ovulation, you have a long follicular and long cycle, or you have a short luteal phase, is to track your cycle. Because after you support your gut health, using cycle tracking to sanity check how period issues improve, you will see it on the chart first, maybe even before you feel it, because your charting can help you incredibly much in learning where you're improving and where you're staying the same after you applied these tips. I would like to invite you now to scan these two QR codes. One of them is for a recipe, little cookbook with some breakfast, lunches, and dinners. Everyone can make them. They are designed to help you support your gut health. And there's also a bit of extra support in there, whereas if you want to talk to me more about your gut health, you can do so. There's a form that you can fill in, and I will review that and see how I can support you. And then the second link is to my Instagram. You can come and say hi there. You can inquire about the plant tracker, and you can just follow me to see more recipes and see how you can support your gut and menstrual cycle better. And now, without further ado, I would like to invite the person with the first question. If anyone has any questions, we have 15 minutes to answer them, and I'd be really happy to read them and answer them while we're on this live. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. If you wanted to know about particular symptoms, if your symptom wasn't listed on the list of symptoms earlier, if you have other struggles regarding your period, or if you just want to say like anything about anything regarding your menstrual cycle and period, you can just put it in the chat and I will make sure to answer it. I'll give you guys maybe a couple more minutes. I do hope that everyone's had a good time and you guys enjoyed and learned a lot. My mission is to support everyone that struggles with menstrual problems by introducing the gut health component, because it's what's been extremely vital in the healing journey of everyone that I've ever worked with, including myself after 15 years of painful periods. And I always believe that sharing the education component of it is going to help you really understand what's missing, because many times people have that, oh, I think I'm doing everything right, but they're missing something that's not very well known yet. Hopefully it's becoming more common, and people are learning more about how important the gut is for a better menstrual cycle. Okay, well, thanks everyone who joined. This was really great. I hope you've learned a lot, and don't hesitate to come say hi on Instagram and grab your free copy. And I believe this is going to stay live on YouTube, so you can just put comments under if you're shy to leave your questions here, and I will make sure to get back to you. I hope everyone has a lovely day, and speak soon. Bye.